Is it time to start stage 2 of my chemotherapy already? Why has the tiny doctor made big changes to my schedule? Why is there no way out? And why am I celebrating the poo? What? Come this way, through the curtain of blurred colons, and find out what's going on and what will happen next. Welcome to my tumour-tastic video diary number 21. Hi, Skatz here. They know who you are. It's Friday, May the 10th, and this is video diary number 21. If you remember, I've been resting for a couple of weeks in between treatments. 2 days ago, I had my first consultation in a different hospital. So this is the third hospital I've been to in this rectal adventure. Tales of the wrecked rectum. We're still in Malaga, but this time it's the Hospital Civil. It's been serving the city for 150 years now, and from the inside it certainly looks like it, with its tall pillars and metal window frames and long bleak corridors. It has the air of a 19th century mental asylum. You thought it was an hospital. It was very empty and bare, just white walls with no colour, no artwork. Nothing but the occasional very small sign to distinguish between identical doors. I seemed to be walking for days with nothing changing until I found the right door for me. I opened it, and there was another long, silent corridor, until I heard some voices. In one of the rooms there was an Englishman's voice, old and croaky, interrupting a Spanish woman. I could tell she was a doctor because she seemed to be telling the man about his treatment, only the man was undecided about whether to have it or not. Compared to his broken voice, the doctor's was sweet and small. As I floated past, I peered in briefly through the open door and saw the tiniest doctor I had ever seen. She had elfin features with intense dark eyes. Very striking. It felt weirdly like I was in a scene from Labyrinth or Lord of the Rings, in the place where the elves live, all white and austere. Yeah, you're in a movie. Carry on down the rabbit hole. What an otherworldly place, especially compared to the modern, colourful hospital I'd had the first stage of treatment in. I have a feeling this is going to be a whole different experience, spending time lying on a bare bed in a bare white room, having dangerous chemicals dripped into my veins as odd sounds and whispered voices drift in and out of my consciousness. Nurse, fetch the special jacket. I eventually found a waiting room, which was equally bare except for rows of blue chairs, and on one wall a pair of gas pipes where something had been fitted previously. I dread to think what it was. Chris turned up shortly afterwards, and we sat there with only 2 other people for not very long, which was a blessing. The other pair were called in by a male doctor. Then in walked the tiny elf doctor, who said my name and guided us into her domain. You can't trust the elves. There was just a desk and some chairs and a basic bed over to one side. I got my phone out with my questions on and asked whether it would be okay to record the consultation so I could remember it, and so I could send it to Liz as well. I don't quite trust my brain fog memory, and I was convinced that when I left this other dimension that some kind of veil of mist would remove all memory of the strange creatures. A small part of me was wondering what had happened to the croaky-voiced Englishman after I'd passed the room. I didn't hear him leave. He never will. So, what happened in the consultation? Actually, the doctor was quite lovely. She started off speaking Spanish, but saw I was struggling. And I think she wanted to make sure she was speaking to me rather than to an interpreter, which was very sweet. We talked through what had happened so far to make sure I understood what I was going through and what was going to happen next. It's going to hurt. Now, I had been expecting a schedule of 1 day of treatment every 3 weeks. That's what the doctor at the previous hospital told me right at the beginning. I remember telling you that. But just like the consults at every other stage of the process, This one revealed all was not what we'd been told before. So instead of just intravenous chemo, I'm also going to be having more chemo tablets. But not at the same time.
Double the dose.
Here's the schedule then. When they give me the start date, they're going to call me at some point soon and I'll start in a week or so, I think. I'll be asked to come in early, around 8 in the morning, for a blood test in the maternity hospital next door for some reason. Then I'll have to have some breakfast while they do the tests. Then I'll go to the oncology day ward to have the intravenous chemo, which will take 3 to 4 hours. That's quite unspecific. I'm not sure why. Is it lack of knowledge or does it vary based on the blood test results? That's a question for next time.
They don't know. It's not a good sign for you, is it?
OK, so let's say that was on a Monday. The following Monday I have to come back to take some chemo tablets. That won't be a long appointment then. I don't remember Tiny Doctor mentioning another blood test at this point, but if there isn't one, it seems like a long way to travel for me just to take some tablets. Chris suggested we see how it goes the first time, then we'll either have some answers or be able to suggest a more convenient time, if that's possible. After all, based on previous experience at the other 2 hospitals, the information I get on the phone call could be different from what I've just been told at the consult. And what I hear on the phone call might be slightly different from what happens when I arrive. They all seem to have slightly different information. It's like applying for a visa or residency. Information is very pliable. Bendy information. It's the bureaucrat's magic 8-ball.
It's all done to confuse you, so you don't ever know what's going on.
So, to recap, day 1 is blood test, then IV chemo. Day 8 is chemo tablets, then day 15 is the beginning of a rest week, or possibly 2 weeks. And that's 1 round of treatment. There will be 6 of those rounds, which will take somewhere between 126 and 168 days. Possibly even longer if my white blood cell count gets dangerously low or I get a fever. Then I'd have to go to the emergency room at any hospital and everything will grind to a halt until I'm well enough to continue.
Fever started long ago. Give me fever.
My volunteer drivers, thank you again to them, they're going to have an interesting time of it on this round. What with very early starts and waiting around or just dropping me off and I'll be waiting for someone else to pick me up at some point in the afternoon. Chris is continuing to be amazing and I might end up staying over at his place some nights so my early appointments won't have such a horrendous wake-up time.
I'll make sure you don't sleep at all.
How do I feel about all of this and how do I feel in general? Well, I'm steeling myself for the long haul and the expected side effects. Some of which might not happen and some of it will feel bloody awful. This is definitely the worst part. Well, except for potentially dying, of course. That would be quite a lot worse. But I'm continuing to smile through it all and wave a fist at Freddy and shout in the face of the oncoming storm, while hoping I get some good anti-sickness tablets. I can cope with feeling tired and pathetic, but throwing up is something I'd quite like to avoid. I haven't done it for a long time. But I remember that when I do throw up, I'm not quiet at all. I sound like a walrus having an argument with a polar bear.
Oh, I'll definitely make you do that then.
Oh, there is some good news, something to celebrate. Oh, but I must tell you first about the hospital car park, because that was another slightly strange and bizarre experience. I'd been told that parking near Hospital Civil was terrible, but I managed to find an open-air car park, almost opposite the entrance. And it was quite big. I found a space really quickly, and only €1.50 for the whole day. I can hear those of you in the UK crying at the prices that you've had to pay over there. And why was the car park bizarre, I hear you ask? Why was the car park bizarre?
Another voice in your head? It's getting a bit crowded in here.
Well, it wasn't the car park as such. It was finding my way out that was bizarre. I went round and round, following signs that clearly said Salida, that's exit, next to a big arrow. Sometimes there were 2 arrows pointing in different directions, which was really helpful, because after I'd been led in one of those directions, around in an odd circle of more than 360 degrees, but found myself back at the same double-arrowed sign, I could then try the other direction. That's so helpful. Neither of them led to an exit. Whew! There were a few gates, but all of them had a barrier down. Eventually I found some people wandering through the car park. I presume they'd been there for many years looking for a Salida. They all had long beards, even the women. I thought I may as well ask them, in case they were creatures native to the land of car park who could help me. I whispered, "Salida?" But my desperate plea just caused them to scuttle away, frightened, into a small copse where perhaps they had some kind of nest.
More creatures? Sounds like you're losing it, mate.
Then, as if by magic, an unintelligible Spanish man appeared, gesturing and mumbling, pointing to the ground, then over the top of a nearby building, as if he was suggesting I could fly out of there. Eventually, he walked on and waved for me to follow, pointing in various directions at once, until we emerged into a clearing where I saw a car park entrance, the one I'd come in through. I cried a few tears, and then looked horrified at the exit. The barrier was down. I was still trapped. I drove towards it, ready to park up, and asked the little man in the pay booth whether there was actually an exit anywhere, or whether this was the Hotel California of car parks. As I pondered how to say that in Spanish, I noticed a sign on the barrier about the size of a postage stamp, which said, in Spanish, some words that I knew. They said, "Automatic barrier. Drive forward slowly." I did just that. The barrier lifted. I was free! I immediately floored the accelerator in case the barrier changed its mind, and I wheel spun my way into the traffic, wearing a fixed manic expression, which wasn't out of place because the door opposite was actually the mental health unit.
That's where you really are.
So, I can't wait to go back to the hospital of such mystery and strangeness. After all, in spite of everything I've said, it was a better experience than anything I've had at the desperately underfunded and understaffed UK and Irish hospitals, where the corridors are full of the forgotten and the bleeding, and you need a mortgage to park within 3 miles of the gates.
I couldn't have designed it better myself.
Let's have some more good news, shall we, before I tell you what random words you sent me for the next song.
Oh God, not again.
As you know, if you've been following this diary, I've had mostly diarrhea, woohoo, or at least very loose poo for well over a year. I can't remember exactly when it started. It could be much longer, all because of Freddie growing inside of me, and there were varying amounts of blood in there. Once again, can I scream at you to say, if you have any amount of blood, even little drops in your poo, get it checked out. Insist on a colonoscopy. Depending on where you live, it could take a while to get an appointment, so request it now. Even if the blood test says no cancer like mine did, look where I am now.
Yeah, you just look where you think you are.
So anyway, a few weeks ago, the poo started at last to have some semblance of shape and form. Not exactly solid, but definitely less liquid, and there was less and less blood. Then none at all. It became more of a yellowy brown colour, fairly consistent. Then, just a few days ago, I wake up in the night with a pain and leap to the loo thinking the bleeding was starting all over again, only to end up doing a long, full poo, the most solid I've seen for many a long year. And it was brown. I'd never been so pleased to see a gooey, muddy brown load of shit in all my life. I was overjoyed. Everybody say, "Woohoo for the poo!" And do you know what? I was up about 4 times in the hour that followed to do it all again, in the nighttime version of the dance of the sugar plum poo. Bliss.
Is the bottom falling out of your world, or is the world falling out of your arse?
There, that's the good news then. Would you like to hear your random words that I'm making into a song? I'm not going to sing it on this video. It will be released as a separate video and only on the Skatzman channel. So remember to subscribe to that if you haven't already, because these diaries and all of the music will soon only be on that channel. I've put a link below and in the comments wherever they are so that you can find it.
It's not a real song. It's only in your head.
OK, here are the words. I'm not sure if I'm going to use them all yet because I've already started writing when I had the first batch. I might keep the second batch for another song. As you'll see, they're all very different and were suggested by an Irish friend, so they deserve an Irish flavour to the song. Oh, and apologies to the watcher who gave me the names of his 3 cats to use in this first song. I'm going to save them for the next one too. Here goes the first batch of words and phrases. Petal, blissful, East End pubs, waterfall, mercy, thrill seekers, whiskey, Siddhartha, vandals. Then the phrases. Your evil character is burrowing into my psyche. Human beings are destructive and mean. Whoever done this, many the hair on your arse turn into fish hooks.
Sounds like the watchers are even more disturbed than you are.
So that was the first batch. Here's the second batch of words I'm saving for the next song. Squirrel, big nuts and marmalade. That's the names of the 3 cats I told you about before. Now, for the Irish words. Shalakabuki, Feek, Feekener, Grushi, Banshee, Puksha, Pokaduda. So you can see why I've saved them for something separate, can't you? I'm quite looking forward to that one. In the meantime, look out for the first amazing song. It's called Vandals Scandal.
It doesn't exist.
Well, that's really all for this week. Next week I'll have something else to say, and probably to sing too. Send me some more random words in the meantime. Tune in next Friday for another thrilling episode of Feck Off Freddy.
You toe rag.
Keep your toes and your fingers crossed, you lovely people. As always, raise your drinking receptacle with me.
Still alive? Are you sure?
And of course, let's do the cancer dance.